You've found this video because probably you're noticing that something feels off in your marriage, something you can't quite name, and you've been Googling things like, is my husband a narcissist at 2 a.m.? Reading through lists of traits, wondering if you're overreacting or if you're actually losing your mind. Here's what I want you to know. Most of the signs you've read about online are like the obvious ones. The ones that women catch pretty quickly. You know, the arrogance, the profound lack of empathy, the insatiable need for attention. But there are three signs that are so subtle and so insidious that intelligent, successful women miss them completely for years. And by the time they see them years later, trust has eroded and their nervous systems are damaged. So I'm going to walk you through those three signs today, and I want you to be honest with yourself as we go through this. Not judgmental, not defensive, just be honest with yourself. Because seeing these patterns clearly could change everything for you and your future. But before we dive in, I want to make sure you're not walking this path alone. We've created a free community in the school platform specifically for successful women in complicated marriages. It's called Detox Your Marriage. And it's where women like you come to see themselves in each other's stories. And that is life-giving. There's no judgment there. There's no pressure. It's just real women talking and getting more expertise about what it's like to be high-achieving, capable, and intelligent, and completely confused about what's happening in your marriage. So I'll put the link in the description. Join us there. Read some stories. You might recognize yourself immediately, and you'll know you're not crazy and you're not alone. Now, let's talk about what you're actually dealing with. Sign number one, what we call strategic chaos. Here's what this looks like on the surface. Your husband creates constant, low-level conflict. They're not big fights. They're small ones. And they're constant. A comment about how you spent money. A critique about how you're managing the house. A question about why you're spending time with that friend. A subtle suggestion that maybe you're not handling something correctly. And individually, each comment seems reasonable. He's just, providing feedback. He's just trying to help. He's just being honest. But cumulatively, you're in a constant state of low-level defensiveness. You're always explaining yourself. You're always justifying your choices. You're always aware of his impending judgment. It's like subtly, he just doesn't have your back. And here's the insidious part. He's actually controlling your nervous system without ever yelling or raising his voice. Right? Most women miss this because they're looking for dramatic conflict. Right? They're waiting for a big blow-up that gives them permission to be upset. But narcissists who are intelligent and strategic don't work that way. They work through the death by 1,000 cuts. You'll describe it to a therapist and your therapist will say, well, does he yell? Does he hit you? Is he cheating on you? And you'll say, no, he's not like that. So you feel like you must be overreacting. Like you should just be grateful for what you have. But here's the thing. Your body, your nervous system knows better. Your body's in a constant state of hypervigilance. You have to monitor his mood and choose your words carefully. And that is you managing the emotional climate of the home. Make no mistake, this is control. It just doesn't look like what we typically think of as abuse. And what is it that makes it so hard to see? It requires no visible transgression. He's not doing anything wrong enough to justify leaving, but he's doing enough to keep you destabilized. And women miss this because they're smart. They rationalize it. They think, well, these are all legitimate points. Maybe I need to do more. Maybe I need to be more mindful of spending. Maybe I am overreacting. And so they accept his feedback as valid, not realizing that the constant feedback itself is the weapon. Here's sign 2, what we call selective vulnerability. A real narcissist, especially an intelligent and affluent one, doesn't come across cold. That's actually a misconception, a popular misconception about narcissism. He can be incredibly warm and incredibly attentive and incredibly vulnerable, except it's only ever about him. Here's what I mean. He'll have deep conversations with you. He might share about his insecurities, his fears about not being good enough, his anxiety about money or status or how people perceive him. He might even cry. He'll open up. He'll let you be his emotional support system. And you'll feel like you have an intimate relationship, like you're truly being known with each other. But the moment you need something, the moment you take that risk to be vulnerable, something shifts. You try to share about your own fears or insecurities, and suddenly he becomes dismissive, saying you're dramatic, you worry too much, that's not really a big deal. Or he'll flip it and make it about him. Well, I have it worse. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Right? So his vulnerability is strategic. It creates closeness and obligation, but your vulnerability is weakness, and there's no room in the room for your vulnerability. Women miss this because they keep waiting, expecting the reciprocity to happen. They think he's shared all these vulnerable things with me. When I need support, he'll show up for me the same way. But it doesn't work that way, because his vulnerability wasn't actually about connection. It was about bonding you to him. It was about making you feel like you're his primary support. You're his emotional support dog. It wasn't about creating a dynamic where you're responsible. It was about creating a dynamic where you're responsible for managing his emotional world. And when you need him to return that vulnerability, the rules change. Suddenly, it's neediness. Suddenly, you're not as strong as he thought. Suddenly, you're diminished, and your needs are pushed out of the room. This is why women in these relationships often say, I feel more alone with him than I do without him, because she's given him access to her emotional world, but he won't give her access to his. Not really, not reciprocally. What makes this hard to see? Well, because there is genuine vulnerability happening. He's not lying about his feelings, right? He's not making that stuff up. But he's only vulnerable in ways that serve him. So it's the asymmetry that's the problem. Sign number 3, rewriting reality. This is the one that makes women feel like they're losing their mind. They're going crazy. It works like this. Something happens, and you have a clear memory of it. And when he describes it, the details are different. Not wildly different. Subtly different, in a way that, makes him look better and you look worse. You said something he interpreted as criticism, but in his version, you were attacking him. You and him made a plan together, but in his version, it was mostly his idea, and you didn't contribute too much. You had a conversation where he was unkind, but in his version, you were being too sensitive. And then when you push back and say, that's not what happened, he doesn't get defensive in an obvious way. Instead, he questions your memory. You always remember things wrong. Your perspective is skewed. You're being dramatic about what actually happened. And over time, inevitably, you start to doubt your own recollection of events. You start to question your perception. You become uncertain about what's real. And That is the point. Why is this so hard to see? Because sometimes your memory is fallible. I mean, all of us are. You're human. You don't remember things perfectly. You shouldn't have to. So when he points out a discrepancy, you start to think, maybe he's right. Maybe you are remembering it wrong. But the strategy that he's doing is using that normal human fallibility as a weapon against you. He's systematically making you distrust your own perception. And a woman who can't trust her own mind can't trust her instincts about whether this relationship is healthy. Women often describe this as, I feel like I'm going crazy. I can't trust myself anymore. I find myself second-guessing everything. I'm always trying to prove my version of events was real. So let's put a label on this. This is gaslighting. It's not obvious because it's not dramatic. There's no big moment where he tells you you're insane. It's just 1,000 moments where your reality is subtly rewritten. And by the time you realize it's happened, you've lost faith in your own mind. What's particularly insidious? If you ever try to call this out, if you ever say, I feel like you're not remembering things right, I feel like you're rewriting history, he'll respond with disbelief. That's not what I'm doing at all. I'm just telling you the truth. I can't help it if you can't remember things accurately. And he might actually believe that. That's the kind of scary thing about this. Because from his perspective, his version is the truth. His perception is reality. And yours is just less accurate. And what's happening underneath is that's his fragile ego being protected with armor, a strong defensive armor. So let's tie it all together. Here's why these 3 signs are so dangerous compared to the obvious ones. With strategic chaos, you're being controlled without knowing it. You think you're just in a marriage where there's, conflict or friction, and you don't realize you're being systematically destabilized. With the selective vulnerability, you're being bonded to someone who will never truly reciprocate. You're investing in an emotional relationship that is actually a one-way street. And every time you realize that and notice that, it breaks you a little bit more. And with the reality rewriting, you're losing the one thing that keeps you grounded, and that's trust in your own mind. And when you can't trust yourself, you can't make decisions. You can't even clearly see what's happening. Together, these 3 create a perfect storm. You're destabilized, but you're invested, and you can't trust your perception of whether you should stay or go. And the women who are smartest, most capable, most successful in their careers, they're the ones that miss these signs the longest because they're used to being right, because you usually are right. They're used to being capable, and they're used to solving problems through logic and hard work. But this can't be solved by logic. It can't be solved by working harder, and it can't be solved with more understanding. It can only be solved by seeing it clearly and then deciding to do something about it. Claim your own healing. That's where we help women. And ultimately deciding, do I want this relationship or not? So if you've been sitting here watching this thinking, oh my word, that's my marriage, I want you to know a couple of things. First, you're not crazy. Your instincts are correct. The fact that someone feels off, that's not you being dramatic or oversensitive. That's your nervous system picking up something that's real. Second, you're not weak for not seeing this sooner. These are subtle patterns designed by someone who understands manipulation very well. He understands manipulation intuitively. So you didn't miss them because you're stupid or blind. You missed them because they're designed to be missed. Third thing I want you to know is this is fixable. but not by trying harder, not by being a better wife, but by waking up to what's actually happening and then making a choice from a place of clarity. Some of you will choose to stay, and if that's your choice, it needs to be an informed choice. You need to know what you're staying with, and you need to regulate your nervous system. You need healing of the relational trauma that have accumulated in your nervous system. That will give you the ability to stop internalizing his narrative as truth. Some of you will choose to leave, and that takes a different kind of courage, because leaving is its own form of trauma. If you decide to leave, you need to leave this relational trauma behind so that you're entering your next phase of life free, liberated, and whole. Either way, the first step is the same. You've got to see it clearly. Here's what I want you to do next. First, join our free Detox Your Marriage community on School. It's free. No credit card, no strings. Just go to the link in the description and sign up. Spend some time reading stories, other videos from me, and recognize yourself in other women's experiences. Because one of the most healing things is realizing that you're not alone. Second thing I'd like you to do is, if you're ready to talk through with someone who's actually understands what you're experiencing, you can book a 15-minute clarity call with us. That's a chance to tell your story to someone who won't judge you and map out what healing and change would look like. We're not going to ask, why don't you just leave? We understand the complexity of the situation. It's just 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. And on that call, we can start to get clear about what actually is happening and whether you really want to, fix this and stay in it. We'll talk about what the real options are. Okay, the links for both of those things are down below. If you're sitting here thinking, I'll do this later, I want you to know later doesn't usually come. The inertia of the relationship pulls you back. And the paralysis of a freeze response gets you doing nothing. And if you do nothing, nothing will change. So do it now, right now. Pause this video, click the link below, join the community, see what's there. And if you want a map, then book the 15-minute clarity call. You deserve to know the truth about what's happening in your marriage, and you deserve support as you figure out what to do next. Thanks for watching. I know this might have been hard to see yourself in, but you're brave for looking. Okay, I'll see you in the community.